So welcome to the first edition of the Rowswell Roundup. Because Parliament's not sitting at the moment doesn't mean we've been sitting on our backsides doing sweet nothing here. In fact, we've been really flat out, and I thought this would be a really good way of communicating to you some of the things that we've been doing. So the first thing we've been doing has been supporting our local community through this pandemic. We've made some 1,700 calls to those aged 80 plus in our area. And the purpose of those calls is just a welfare check, just to check in and to see how they're going and if they need any practical help. We're now calling those aged between 70 and 79, and once we've got that through that list, which is about 2,500, we'll then crack on with the list of people aged 60 to 69, because in our area there are some 33% of our community is aged within the at-risk category for this particular virus. So we're doing our best to reach out to those households personally. We've also been updating people regularly with emails, so individual emails to households but also to businesses, because businesses through this time are really hurting, and there are a number of support packages available both through the state and the federal government, and as the local state member of Parliament it's my job to try and help those businesses and help our community understand what's available to support them through these times. And lastly, we've also sent a bunch of text messages out as well. We hit probably 8,000 text messages to local residents, and about half of the people that we sent a message to responded asking for more information, and we've gone back to those people personally as well. So we've been doing heaps of stuff to try and support our community, and that's what you would expect, and that's what me and my team are doing. I can't begin to tell you how many inquiries I've had from local residents, just wanting to know what they can and can't do with these restrictions. And I get it, it's confusing, and the state government, frankly, is responsible for some of that confusion, because on the one hand they're saying as part of your daily exercise you can go for a walk, you can go for a run, you can go for a bike ride, but you can't fish by yourself, you can't play around a golf by yourself, and that you can't stand up paddleboard by yourself. So these things are confusing, and these things that are apparently banned, they're not just good for people's physical well-being, they're also good for your mental well-being. And I've got a deep concern about people's, not only their physical well-being, but their mental well-being surviving these extraordinary times. So I've written to Daniel Andrews on your behalf, seeking urgent clarity around these matters. And as soon as I have that information, I will provide it to you. Now, some other clarification that's really needed, and the opposition, the state Liberal team, have been calling for, is clarification around schools. Now, a huge shout out to the Prins and to the teachers at the 26 local primary and secondary schools we have in the area for supporting their school communities and their school families through these otherwise challenging times. And a huge shout out to the parents who are at home looking after 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 kids, whilst also trying to hold down a job and work from home at the same time. But the reality is the clarity is needed, and from an opposition perspective at least, we've been calling for greater clarity from the Education Minister and from the Premier. The state of the Victorian economy is different to our national economy, and as at December last year the Victorian economy was $1.1 billion in the red. $1.1 billion. So that's before the tragedy of the Victorian bushfires, and that's before the state of emergency with coronavirus. Now, the Treasurer, Tim Pallas, has said today that he wishes to borrow an additional $25 billion to try and get Victoria through the current coronavirus situation. Now, keep in mind that Tim Pallas also said on the eve of the last state election in 2018 that he would borrow another $25 billion. So in this term of government, so far, Dan Andrews and Tim Pallas have borrowed some $50 billion. Now, if we need to borrow another $25 billion to get Victoria through this coronavirus crisis at the moment, I'm cool with that. I've got absolutely no issues with it. But it is absolutely up to the Victorian government, up to Tim Pallas and up to Daniel Andrews to justify how every cent of that $25 billion is being spent to try and get our state through this. Because at the end of the day, this money is not theirs. This money is yours. It's your money. And as taxpayers in Victoria, it will be your responsibility, whether it be now or in the future, to pay it off. So this money cannot be spent, must not be spent on paying off debt and bills of cost overruns for major projects that we know exist in Victoria at the moment. We need an assurance. We need certainty and clarity. We need the Victorian government to give every Victorian an assurance that every cent of that $25 billion that they borrow will be spent on getting our Victorian community back on track and out of this coronavirus circumstance. I hear what you're saying. You're saying that now is not a time for politics, and I couldn't agree with you more. But please be assured that I will continue to do the job that you elected me to do. Where there is uncertainty during these times, I will seek clarity on your behalf. And where the government seeks to spend billions of dollars, I will seek to ensure that every cent of it is spent in a proper way. My team and I will continue to work tirelessly to support our community during this time. Please stay in touch and we'll get through this together.